Hello and welcome back to Final Sector. You might be wondering where the hell we've been for the last couple of videos. We did actually plan and record our China debrief, but you, Kyle, have been quite sick, and then you got better, and we recorded in the very small window that you got better, and then the day after you got sick, quite sick again. So we just decided, you know what? Health comes first. We'll just scrap the next couple of videos, and we'll come back when you're feeling better, and you are feeling better.
Joke, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I? Oh,
well,
okay. Well,
for
the next 24 hours, and
then you told me you were okay. So unless you
no, it's all good.
Yeah.
Relatively good now. Cannot
yeah,
complain.
so thankful for that. But yeah, thanks to everyone. We had actually a couple of people reach out wondering where our stuff was. So it's nice that people actually care enough. But yeah, that's the reason. Health obviously comes first. But we are back after Miami, which is, if we had recorded a preview, it would have been one I was coming into saying, okay, well, it's not one I'm really looking forward to. But
should be all right.
It turned out to be a pretty damn good weekend.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious how you saw the whole weekend. Obviously, we've got the Norris victory. We're gonna talk about that. But as a whole weekend, I'm curious how you felt about it.
Yeah, it was easy to forget that coming out of last year, it was actually pretty good. I even remember, I think there was a lot of fighting, particularly in that last sector heading into the first sector, and of course we had the big Max chase down on his teammate and his fight through the grid.
True, yeah.
But also a lot of battling. But this weekend felt good, but for different reasons. It was like the tires, even like at the start of quali, was really weird here, and that meant in the race it was really weird. And you had a lot of cars that was super close, and still a lot of fighting, but like completely different nature to last year. It was like same circuit, but entirely different cars almost in the nature of the cars. It was quite strange. But fortunately it didn't lead to something that could have been quite boring and more like year one and line astern, not a lot happening. I mean, we did have another sprint weekend, a back-to-back for the sprints. But that was decent. The main race was decent, so there's plenty to look into. Outside of course, the fact that, as you said, we did have a new winner, and it wasn't due to a Max retirement. How about that? Isn't that a talking point?
Yeah, very true, very true. Like, I mean, we got to start there. Like the Norris victory, because it doesn't come without its controversy as well. Like, I hate to be that guy, but let's talk about the safety car first of all, because that one was a big fuck up in the first place. Like, not regarding, just disregarding the fact that it obviously helped Norris to win, maybe, potentially, not too sure, but the fact that it picked up the P2 driver and slowed them down so considerably that I think the rest of the field lost like 20 seconds to Norris, because he was only 11 seconds, I think, ahead of Max when he came into the pits, and then it pretty quickly jumped up to 30 when they picked up Max.
Well, I wasn't sure what was happening because they picked him up, but then I mean they of course figured it out, and I could tell they were waiting until the straight to let him by as well. So I guess at that first twisty bit, but it was like when they got into that back straight, I guess then they let everyone kind of run through, and then things did course correct from there. So it almost for a second got a bit what was going on, and apparently Max was on the radio going, I know we're probably going to be let through, but let's make sure we're actually let through here, because where the hell is Norris? He's just somewhere out in the ether.
There was the comment that like he's probably going to end up at the back of the pack, but a lap ahead of everyone else. And it's like, that's not good. But and
I think it was seen that even if like the safety car had come out and caught him properly, he still had enough of a gap to come out in front. So it's
probably,
yeah.
But it's still one of those. It was still kind of touch and go. So, and it's one of those things. Like, say he had a slightly slower pit stop, and Max does get ahead, and we know how tough it is to overtake here. Would that have been enough, even with Max's apparent damage, because he hates bollards? Could that have been enough to hold Norris behind? They have such great straight line speed, as we've seen, that overtaking even with the DRS seems to be really, really hard. if he had just edged ahead with that without that safety car fuck up, then could he have won? Quite possibly, but we'll never know.
Yeah.
In saying that, I have to play devil's advocate because that's what I do. But in saying all that, it doesn't take away from Norris's victory. I don't think he was quick this race, and I think he was the only person to fully benefit from the safety car, because I think both Piastri and Sainz pitted, and Ricciardo, I think,
a tiny bit earlier.
Literally a lap
there
earlier.
There might
I
have
think,
been one other midfield driver potentially, but but Norris, of course, was the big one who waited out.
Yeah, I think Perez came in for a second pit stop, but he had already.
Some of them took advantage to get a second. Yeah.
But I think Norris was the only one.
How that worked out.
I think because it was so late in the race, it was like lap 24, 5, like mid to mid 20s or something that the safety car came out. And everyone started either on the softs or the mediums. I guess some started on the hards.
Mediums or the hards. And so basically everyone at the front was on the medium.
Right,
so they'd already shot it because it was better to get on a hard.
And then I think most of the other people on the hards were reacting to other people's pit stops in the midfield, because again, overtaking is hard. So by the time the safety car came out, everyone had already done all their reacting, and Norris was the only one that was bold enough to stay out. He benefited from it, and that's part of the game of Formula One. Is sometimes you need a little bit of luck. He got the luck, perfect for him, and to his credit, he gapped Max in the final stint as well.
It wasn't just like this is a super late safety car and then Max is out of the race or whatever, and it's effectively a golden platter situation. I mean, you still saw him come out in front, but then you still thought, well, it's still Max in P2. He's not reporting anything major. But after that first lap, it kind of wrote itself. And of course, we got like the best result for that, but almost all weekend I was hoping we saw an instance where Norris could show the pace that car had. Now, obviously, going into this weekend, they made a lot of changes to that car.
Upgrade,
this was probably like the proper, even what they're calling like B-spec model. We saw it kind of in quali, and even for the sprint, where in the medium, that car looked deadly quick, but it seemed to only really enjoy a fairly small window. Outside of that, it was still fast, but not like contention for the fastest car. And it seemed like then on the final laps, just like Norris kept like stuffing it up, and then in the main race he couldn't do a lot. And you just thought, I was almost just like, I hope at some point he gets in a position where he can show what that car can do. And lo and behold, fate put him right in the spot to go. And I was like, okay, let's see what this car can do. And that car went. I mean, it's of course both car and driver. You've got to have synergy between the two. And he obviously had to get it that far, nursing the tires that far when a lot of other drivers obviously picked. They were struggling on it. And he obviously found that he could manage it with that car, even though he was defending, fighting. There's a lot of cars in all sorts of trains there. Yeah. So it was nice just to give him that ability to show what it could do. And then to capitalize on it is a big bonus. It's a shame that Piastri wasn't more up there with him. I thought even his first half of the race pace was pretty phenomenal.
I think his whole weekend, honestly, he was able to get on top of the tire. You mentioned the tires earlier as well. Tire overheating was kind of big the first 2 years we were here, but this year in particular, with however the tire's constructed, particularly that soft tire, overheating was a big issue. I think we heard Albon on the radio during maybe one of the qualifyings where he's saying 6 laps and the tires are gone, like in his push lap on the soft. And just all struggling with overheating, which would cause them to slide and just lose so much time in
and even in quali, I think that was what Albon commented as well. That's why so many drivers struggled into the last corner, because the tire just gave up. Or one lap it had the grip, and the next lap they hit the brake, and there's just nothing, and there was no consistency even between runs. So it was.
Or you even push like just ever so slightly too hard, as you've taken too much out of the tire, and then like you saw on Q3, I think final runs. I don't know many people that went faster. They were all,
I don't think there was anyone that improved on that last run.
because they all were trying to push a little bit too hard, like just try and go that little bit
And
faster,
just
like you do
nothing
in
there,
the
yeah.
final run in Q3 normally. But
Yep.
you do that and you take too much out of the tire, and then
Or they just tried a medium because they went, we don't think
Yeah.
there's much in the soft. Let's just try
Yeah,
a
because
medium.
that's what Norris did, and I think the Mercedes went to that as well. They tried to run the mediums, but
because they thought there was nothing left in the soft. And
yeah. But like
even for the sprint quali, I think the fastest lap for that day was set on the medium. None of the soft laps actually beat the best medium laps that were in Q2.
I think it was
For the actual quali, they started
Yes.
going faster, but I think for the sprint quali, they didn't end up going faster. On
Norris.
that same day.
I think they said Norris went 9/10 slower on the soft tire in Q3 compared to his
Yes,
medium.
he was the biggest delta.
Yeah, and I think Piastri went like a 10th or 2 slower as well. Like that McLaren just did not like the soft tire on a one
More than any other car.
Yeah.
But on the medium, it seemed to be really happy.
Yes. Yeah, true. But like the point is, going back to my original point, Piastri did seem to all through the weekend get on top of those issues a little bit quicker. Norris was struggling. Oscar could make the best of that in both qualifying, so I think he qualified higher than Norris in both the qualifying sessions. He was running, as you say, in P2. He was staying a very consistent 2 or 3 seconds
He
from
had to
Max.
pass Leclerc early.
He had to
made
do
that
yes,
move on him.
Yep, that's true. And yeah, held that P2 for quite a while. And yeah, like I said, 3 seconds from Max. Even I don't know, 20 laps into the race, he was still there.
The whole first stint, basically.
And yeah, that safety car comes 1 lap earlier. We might be talking about Oscar winning the race. So, and his race got quite a bit worse when he collected tried to collect signs.
Imagine if those two were fighting for the win instead of fighting for P4 or 5, whatever it was. It would have been even more thumbs out.
The Sainz incidents. Sainz got very hot-headed this race. Like every time he was on the radio, he was just complaining, and he just wasn't happy at all this race for some reason. I think there was I'll say like borderline move that Piastri kind of forced him off the track. I think it was borderline. I probably would have been happy either way. They decided not to give him the penalty, but I'm curious how you saw it, but like I thought it was either way. The Sainz sort of dive bombed down the inside because obviously he was frustrated that Piastri didn't get the penalty and he wanted to get past, and decided it looked like live that he literally stopped on the apex. Like it wasn't like he got onto the apex and kept he was still going. It looked like he stopped. The car stopped dead on the apex. Oscar tried to cut back, and because Sainz wasn't moving, that didn't work and broke his front wing and ended up out of the points in the end. But Sainz did get a penalty for that one, which I think, again, if Piastri hadn't got the damage, and maybe if Sainz was in control into the corner, didn't have that slight locking, he probably would have gotten away with it. But again, it was borderline. But it was something that
second bit, it's important to note what you said about being out of control. I think that's when they take a dimmer look, as if you're out of control.
Yep.
I swear I recall coming into either this weekend or off the back of China or into China, where they almost seemed to clarify the rules on racing.
They did,
and
and
the biggest thing is F1 has always, like, people call it like the max rules of racing, whatever you want to call it, because I guess he really found a way to push these rules to the limit. Yes. Where if you are the leading car even by a little bit, you can really push things and push people off the edge and that, and technically by the rule, you are allowed to do it. And I mean, this circuit showed how there was some great battles of drivers that probably were doing it through the spirit of the rules. I mean, some of the moves that Hamilton made around the inside or outside I thought were quite good, and he generally was trying to be more, I like some people will say like respectful, but I don't think it's disrespectful. It's still racing within the rules. I guess it's just how you choose to go about it, and maybe it just thinks how they look. You know how like in I'm trying to make a really big comparison here. In like skateboarding, you have like clean skating and like I forget what they call it, like sloppy skating or something. Sketchy, yeah. It's like two different kind of styles of it. It's almost similar to this. You can choose to be like more clean, or you can be more sketchy with your driving. And what Oscar and Sainz were doing is more sketchy. I was fine with what Oscar did because he ran him wide there, but like this is always going to happen at this corner. You're on the inside of a hard left. As long as you don't fully run off the track, then that's okay by the rules. Even if the other guy's like, "Oh, look, I'm here and I'm driving back on," it's like, yeah, but if we do want to be semi-consistent, this is technically what we've said is okay. If you want to pull that up again, that's fine.
I think technically as well, like the rules. The guidelines and the clarification that you said for that they brought in, particularly passing around the outside, they are much not stricter, but like they're much more in favor of the car on the inside in that instance.
The outside car has to effectively
they have to be
directly alongside or ahead. If they're the tiniest bit back, they're considered basically they need to yield.
Correct,
is the stance that they've chosen. And in this case, it was pretty cut and dry. Sainz was there, but he was not alongside
considerably
or ahead.
Alongside. Yes.
The difference then in the other move again was a slightly different corner, but you can see he basically locked it up and then had to self-correct, and then that is effectively an out of control dive bomb. I know some people will make some pretty brash dive bombs.
It was also very, very late, is I think the other thing.
Which is part of the loss of control because it was so late. So if he had pulled it off and got it stopped, blinder of a move. Good job. But it wasn't. It then unfortunately stepped over Piastri's wing, which was kind of a sour way to end it because they'd had a good tussle and a good fight that race. And as we say, Piastri probably did deserve more. But I was just going to round it off. Coming into a weekend where, understandably, I think people had said, look, we know that Piastri's a strong driver, but he probably needs to pick it up a bit here. He probably has been lacking a little bit. He kind of did this weekend. He only had half of the upgrades on that car, and we saw even last year when this kind of happened in Austria kind of era when he only had half of it and started to pick it up. So this may bode well. Maybe this is a good turning point. Hopefully overall he can still pull something out of it. And when he gets the full upgrade for the car, hopefully again we see that double dream team, I guess, then doing what was so exciting last year when both of them looked like they were trying to take it to Max, get a pole here and there, get in his way.
Well, I think that's Norris even came out and said because the Miami was so overshadowed by the tire overheating issues, which was so it was more about managing the tires rather than exploiting your aerodynamic package, which is obviously what they've focused on. They don't think they've really shown even the full extent of their upgrades. Which
they didn't even think this would be a great track for them. They were saying as well. They were like, even this package shouldn't be that great here. So, I mean, it's all pointing to hopefully where, as much as we still think Max will be a very strong, dominant factor, it now feels a little more likely where you go into a weekend thinking there's a scenario where he could get the setup wrong, and now we've got actually quite a strong car.
And it's not even
at that heels.
It's not even just one team that might be there as well. You've got McLaren, who are obviously they look extremely quick with the upgrades this weekend. You've got Ferrari, who are also looking quite quick this season and are also going to be bringing their major upgrade package next race too. If they get that right, we could have two teams now pushing Max and, to a lesser extent, Perez. And that's even for Max. It's hard to hold off 4 informed drivers. I would say all 4 of them are in form at the moment. I think Leclerc probably is building to his form, but and probably Piastri as well. But Norris and Sainz, I think, are both confident enough in their abilities that if they can get it, they could just roll into it. They could click,
and they could be a genuine, real strong
for sure. So
challenge, or so we can hope. As we say, it's not that long ago we were in China and Japan where we saw some level of dominance. But as I said, this at least opens up to show it is possible. There was a scenario laid out where Max had a chance to get back, and he didn't. And if that is possible, then anything else is now possible, which is nice to keep in the back pocket.
Yeah, it's also like you think about Miami the last 2 years as well, about how dominant Max has been. Like
It's
last year
true.
in particular, when it
It
coming
was
from
an
P9
absolute-
to P1 in like the first half of the race and just absolutely smashing it. And then you
That
come
was
to...
effectively when it kicked off his reign of terror,
Exactly.
which only ended in Singapore
Yeah.
and Melbourne, which wasn't even an end, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still going.
So the fact that it had closed even from 1 year to now, and it's closed that much, I think bodes pretty well so far. I don't expect, like you say, Red Bull to be this close to McLaren and
Yeah.
Ferrari every weekend. I do expect them to still be one step ahead. I don't know what upgrades they've got planned on the horizon as well. They could have another major upgrade coming soon that just shoots them, 2 seconds a lap up the road.
Into the
and,
stratosphere.
yeah. So
The true zero pod.
who knows? We don't know, but it's promising. It's promising that it does seem like it's closing up between a few teams at the top. Where it's not closing up is for Aston and McLaren, Mercedes. Sorry, those two teams are not really going anywhere. I don't know that they're going backwards, but I just think the top 3 teams are moving ahead, and they're just sort of not. I don't know.
You kind of look at Aston, and maybe it's not too surprising. And I mean, if you thought that something was really wrong, you'd be more likely to see Alonso coming out and I guess starting to be a lot more displeased with things. I mean, this did seem like the first weekend where he really couldn't find a lot in the car. Like even in quali, he struggled to even get into like I think he got Q3 in main quali, but I think it's sprint quali he didn't, and like Stroll out qualified him.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
And I mean, he did kind of recover in the race, but he was mostly fighting midfield cars the whole time, outside of, I think, Russell, who I guess he finished behind the main race, but I don't think he was that close to him. Even then, Russell also had a completely anonymous race. I don't even remember. The only thing I remember from him is complaining that he couldn't get past a Haas in the sprint race, and that was about it. I don't even remember seeing him for the rest of the event. So, like, the Aston, you can kind of go, okay, maybe they're still working on things we haven't seen a lot. They could still jump up. Again, I was just going to round out with McLaren. They were, like, still in their slump of being the slowest or the second slowest car last year in Miami. They were, like, P13 and 17 or something like that.
Right,
and now they've gone to being basically the fastest car here, which is amazing for them. But in return, especially for Mercedes, where this was a weekend where I think they brought some improvements, and they were saying, we've actually brought quite a bit here.
It's worrying,
and the improvement showed where? I mean, sure, they had a tough fight and a quick battle, but it's like they were battling the midfield. It's like
they were battling
it's good
Haas.
TV, but that's not who they want to be battling at all. So what? Next weekend, it's going to be interesting. You'll either see this is now locked in, and wow, this is bad, or maybe they're gone, right, let's get our crap together and actually start fighting the Ferraris and McLarens again.
You want to, I don't know, I feel like their track record since kind of 2022, their track record with anything like that has not been good. So I find it hard to have any sort of faith that they'll be able to find anything. They always seem on the back foot now, it's not something I like. At Aston, you can kind of understand because they've kind of always been in the mid pack, and then they jumped up real suddenly.
And you feel there's still a lot of potential there. They're still not a race, a strong racer and a championship winner. It's a growing period. But Mercedes
is
from the other side.
Exactly. It's odd to see them as this team that just struggles to
make Q1 consistently. They get P11 and 12, and you go, that feels about right for them. And it's like, that's weird to say, but P11, 12 is about where they are.
It's about where
there's
they
only
are,
20 cars in the grid.
So when you're fighting to be at the top of the bottom 10, that's not. I mean, it's great if you're a Haas or hell, even I would even an RB maybe, but even RB, I think even Haas and RB are probably looking, hey, we want to be in the top 10, and in terms of probably Sonoda and Hulkenberg, they have been on a consistent basis. And I think we just saw Sonoda go. Was it Sonoda? It must have been Sonoda go ahead of Stroll in the Drivers' Championship as well. Because of how he's done.
He would have.
So that's we've talked about Stroll, about how normally does just enough, and if you're gonna get beaten by an RB of Tsunoda, that's look, that car is decent, but he should not be behind Tsunoda. So
notwithstanding how the year's gone so far.
But it is like the midfield is now becoming a little bit more murky in that aspect, where, like you say, you've got the Mercedes and the Astons, and you've got RB, and you've got Haas there, and
or
hell, even Alpine.
A top team, and even if you're a top team and you drop the ball a little bit now, they are snipping at the heels. Like, it felt like at the start of the year, you had a consistent top 10 and a bottom top 10.
Yes,
and we always went, well, you need someone from the top 10 to drop down. But it feels pretty quickly that, as you say, has
changing,
instantly kind of closed up and gotten more murky. And given the consistency of your Tsunodas, of your Hulkenbergs, they will just grab it if it's given to them, as they have so far, as Yuki did again this weekend, finishing, as we say, even ahead of Russell and Alonso. That was just out of credit and a strong drive, and a good setup for the car. Of course, we saw the pace. I mean, it could just be a turn of pace for the RB. I mean, we saw how well that Ricciardo did in the sprint. And we're still yet to see a race where both the RB drivers are actually in top form. It's like Yuki's been the only one performing, and then the one race Daniel does, Yuki is nowhere, and then Yuki comes back and Daniel goes back to the back. So, but irrespective, it does show that, hey, they've got that car in a good window. They're taking Mercs and Aston's points, and they could be snipping, Ferrari that gets something wrong, or Piastri in this case, which had an issue, and then instantly falls behind all these drivers, right? But even for the Mercedes, I was going to say before, let's say we come out in Imola and they have a decent weekend, one of them gets a podium. You still wouldn't go, oh, they're back. You'd go, well, this feels like a flash in the pan. Like, you wouldn't be surprised if afterwards they're saying things like, well, we did well, but we have no idea why. Like, they said that a few times last year.
Remember Brazil?
Hamilton would get like a P2 or 3, or he'd win, and they go, we need to understand why. And you still feel it's like, I don't think you guys do understand when you have a good weekend why. And that's a problem, because I think the others, like Ferrari, like McLaren, do understand that really well. And McLaren as well are going to come out of here, you feel like, being really strong. And even Ferrari seem to just be consistently hitting it away.
Particularly McLaren, like you say, like every time they brought an upgrade package, it's worked. Like every time.
That changed from where they were last year. It's because every good result, every package, they've just understood it, maximized it, and then applied it to the next one, and just
and Ferrari, I guess, because they haven't brought their upgrades in like big packages yet. They haven't really seen it, but they've kind of done the same thing. And then you think back to Aston having their troubles when they started to slip back last year as well. And it was because their upgrades sent them backwards, and they didn't really understand it. And Mercedes, the reason why they're struggling is because we don't understand why our car's fast or why our car's slow when their upgrades don't do anything either. And this is making sure their correlation with their upgrades in the simulator does translate to the track, I think, is so people don't really think about it. They just expect upgrade mean good, car go faster. But the correlation side of it is so underratedly important. That's not a word, but
I know what you're saying.
It is
especially when you're in this era of the regs, or we're partway through now, effectively moving into, I guess it'd be the second half of this type of regs, if 2026 is the next set. And it is important that when you do bring something now, that you both have strong faith in it, and then you can quite maximize it. It's of course important every time, but it really can matter now, especially when things are so close, and we're instantly seeing that, even how this is playing out. And it's easy to forget that it used to all be about, well, you're still never going to break into, the top kind of few spots unless you are a factory team with a factory manufacturer. And McLaren just proving again and again, you don't need to do that, which it just adds more mud to Mercedes' face. It's not that Mercedes are going, but it's just tricky in our power unit, whatever. It's like, but your customer is absolutely just wiping the floor with you. And they're your customer. So they don't even have anything that they can try to hide behind, or any guys to as if Hamilton, his exiting wasn't enough egg on their face.
Also, did you see the Christian Horner comment about how they've taken 220 employees from Mercedes as well? Like, people are like rubbing salt into the wound, I feel like, with Mercedes at the moment. I feel like...
Yes.
I get it. I do. Because obviously they were so dominant for so long and so...
They were so dominant. They had the pedigree. They did have the...
There was a smugness as well about it.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's... The same thing will come when Red Bull eventually drop as well. Of course. Which I think is also entirely fair.
Yes. It did happen when they dropped last time. And Christian Horner wore it like a nice suit.
Yeah, true.
But yes, we will see.
But, yeah. I guess... Oh, I mean, there's a couple of... You know what? The next thing I want to talk about... Let's talk about Kevin Magnussen. Because this is a great...
Yeah, sure.
This is a great conversation topic. He had a, let's say, adventurous weekend. He picked up 4 penalties during the sprint and got another one during the main race for taking Sargent out. He's now on 10 out of a possible 12 penalty points, and from what I'm seeing, that will last until the end of the year. So
correct.
I don't know if I've ever seen anyone get only 1 penalty point. I feel like you always get them at like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
He's gonna get a race ban, isn't he? Surely. A 10 out of 12 with like near enough 20 races to go.
And with he's going, yes. Even if he tries not to, we will probably see that clause. Brought up. And it's interesting that probably isn't even enough, really, for not enough in terms of a ban, but even that how it's structured still doesn't feel right for, I guess, how he has been driving and going about things. If you do want to apply the rules as you have been.
Yeah, he
We came out of Saudi. I remember when we came out of Saudi saying this might set a precedent.
Yes,
if
this
is a once-off, then no worries. But it wasn't a once-off because he decided in the sprint to go back to Saudi. Different circumstances. Like, I think the reasons he gave for doing it, trying to pull the team angle, was just convenient. But I think I agreed with what Hulk said, where it was like, I think Hulk was going strong enough where even if Kev wasn't there, he was probably safe from behind, and how we saw the rest of that weekend turn out.
Io Komatsu didn't defend his actions and said there were no team orders for it to try and hold him behind.
It's convenient for
Magnussen. It was convenient for him because he knew he got away with it in Saudi, and people were praising him for his moves in Saudi. And it's like, oh, maybe I can get the praise again for being a dumbass. But no, not this time. Not this time, Kev.
And to be fair, it's not like he had that he was fighting for P8, and I guess it was that point when Hamilton had clearly overtaken him.
Yep.
And at that point, he can try send it to get it back, but it would be quite Larry. And I mean, he did go for the Larry move, and to Hamilton's credit, he had his awareness around him to racing. And I thought he was awfully kind after the sprint to oh, it was just hard, good racing. You'd see that, you'd honestly go, really? Like, you're not going, wow, man. Like, some of it was fun, but some of it's over the line. He was like, no, it was good. And I mean, if that's the case he wants to play, this is the Hamilton where he'll come 8th on a normal weekend and absolutely slag it. But if he came out of it enjoying it, then so be it. But I mean, Magnussen really quickly obviously got himself the penalty, and you thought, well, then it doesn't matter what he's fighting here. Like, what is he actually trying to do? Give Tsunoda the place, which is, I guess, what I was hoping. And hey, huzzah, as it turns out.
Sure happened.
Hamilton was his own downfall. But then he just kept going with it, and it was like, why is he doing this the second time now where it's a ridiculous move? Other than just for the thrill of it. And maybe if it was for the thrill of it, well, stuff it. He's a Formula 1 driver. Maybe he was having a great time just trying to see how long he could hold him behind, driving off the track. In which case, brilliant. I mean, then just say that. Like, sure, that's probably what he was doing. He was just fuck it.
He's doing the speed run of how quickly can I lose an F1 seat. Like,
yeah, probably.
Yeah, because everything I'm reading is like, I don't know that the team, particularly Komatsu, is like not defending any of the moves that he made, and not defending, the penalty he got for Sargent. The blunt way he's sort of talking about it and the way he's sort of dismissing it, I don't know that they really want Kevin there. And I think when they're
it's an
going,
interesting strategy to try keep his seat as well.
yes, yeah, that's the good point. Especially if he does get enough penalty points to get a race ban, and then you get someone like an Ollie Behrman who's touted to be in that second seat as it stands now that Hulkenberg's moving on.
Yes. Give
and
him the choice to show something.
Exactly.
He has
and
a cracker weekend.
Yep.
Well,
then you shit out of luck,
thanks
brother.
for your services.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially especially if they know he's almost guaranteed in there because Hulk's leaving. They're gonna be like, get him in there early if he's actually got the chops for it.
Yep.
Get him up to speed half a year early. So
yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting to look at him in a vacuum. Even the incident with Sargent, I think, as the commentators said, you get what he was trying to do, but again, it was for such a lowly place and it seems so desperate and so high risk. It's like, why just show that you can live to fight another day? All you're showing right now is that you can't let something go, and you can't live to fight another day. You don't have the confidence to overtake the Williams down the straight, I guess is what he's saying. Bit clumsy. Felt bad for Sargent. You'd hope that he would have just seen a checkered flag. I mean, he's got enough home races, but still, he was obviously liked there. That was a bit of a murky incident, a murky way for him to go. But it's interesting with Kev, and I guess the case is saying in a race where that's happening, it just felt redundant to keep giving him penalties. It's like, I think I liked an interesting point, which is where when we didn't used to have these time penalties and used to almost always be stop goes, and you had to serve within 3 laps. It's like, do we even now more liberally use even just a drive through in you get a 10-second penalty, it's automatically a drive through, you have to serve in like 2 laps or something. Because that would, I guess, force him to take the penalty and take him out of the instance where he's still there. Because you saw it, because Hamilton's like, well, sure, I'm 20 seconds ahead of him, but I got Yuki at my backside, and I still need to pass the guy to get the hell out of here. And he's obviously not going to let me through, even though he's 20 seconds down the road, theoretically. So it felt a bit weird.
Actually.
It's like he's past him, but he's still got to physically pass him. But what does Magnussen have to lose? Because he's not there. He's in P20, but he's physically here.
It's true.
That's why it felt a bit whack.
That's true. Like, now that they're giving sort of harsher penalties for these sort of moves rather than the 5 seconds that they used to, they're more trying to push it to 10 seconds. So they, we've talked about this in earlier ones as well. But yeah, it's a fair point you say. If he does get the second one, just straight up, you're like, okay, you got 2 10-second penalties. Now it's converted to a drive-through and you have to serve it. You're right. I think that could change how it all works. Like, it would stop someone like Kevin just doing it over and over and over again and getting 300 seconds worth of penalties, but still holding the position.
Even the Saudi thing, it would have changed as well, right? He would have had to have, I guess, pulled off to do that.
Yep.
And I mean, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's okay, like we saw with that dramatic thing between Hamilton and Vettel in Canada, where Vettel got the small penalty, and that meant that Hamilton could just sit behind him because he knew he didn't have to force the overtake because he had the position. But this was a different case. They weren't out there in isolation, the two of them. As we say, he was still stuck behind him with a massive train behind him for cars that all wanted that individual point as well. So Hamilton couldn't just sit back. But Magnussen, it's like he knows he didn't have to send it and defend so hard for Hulk. So it was still a question of why was he doing it out of just for the sake of it? Because it's not for a point. It's not to help out his teammate. It's just because he wants to just keep racing hard as if he could have that position for the point. That's like that must have been his only motive in the moment. I mean, sure, no driver just wants to let people past, but to fight that hard over it for a place that literally means nothing, it's like you've got to have some motive there that's forcing you to do that. So.
It's interesting topic, but we'll leave it there. There's more.
You feel like in the drivers' briefing before Imola, they're probably going to talk about it and it'll be discussed. It's one of those that'll probably be discussed internally, and they might come out with a new guideline or directive or something to say, look, here's what we're all thinking about this. So.
Potentially, So
I was hoping that Yuki, who actually did end up getting past Hamilton, could have kept that place on merit. I mean, he did end up getting the point, but he even said himself it felt a tiny bit hollow. Like he wished that he had have defended harder on that last lap when Hamilton came through and overtook him. Hamilton, of course, getting a speeding penalty in the pits
That's
when they're all
right,
taken through,
yeah.
which was quite a wacky
Weird
scenario.
one, hey? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he just held his hands up. I think sometimes when they go through behind like a safety car, they forget to
Turn on the pit limiter, or
just turn on the limiter because they're
Yeah.
going that slow anyway. And I think the team thought that might have been what
Right.
he did.
Yeah, okay.
And I think they also got a slap on the head for being in the pits without
their
helmets as
helmets.
well.
Yeah.
Which again, you think this is a team which won for like 7 years in a row, and they've got a pit
Yeah.
crew out without helmets. It's like,
It's
like sure you go, it was just an accident, it was a little thing. It's like, but this is
that's
supposed to be the Mercedes,
yeah.
like the creme de la creme refined oil pit
Yeah.
stop team,
Yeah.
or just team in general with the amazing pit stop team. And they're out there without their helmets on. Like, what's the hell's going on over
It's
there?
pretty amateur hour, isn't it? Yeah.
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 I mean, if you guys want to be fighting for P5 in the constructors, join the guys that can't screw the tires on properly, and the other ones that I don't know, don't know how to double stack and all that. Just join the rest of the clowns at the back of the grid.
Yeah.
Let cars out in the pit lane in front of other cars. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the old Ocon thing. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was another good one. At least he broke his own front wing, and who was it?
Yes.
God, was it Sainz?
think it
Leclerc.
was
Leclerc.
Sainz,
It was Leclerc.
it was a Ferrari.
It's definitely a Ferrari, but he didn't get any damage, and it was like literally the lap out to the grid. It wasn't even like for qualifying. It's like, I need to get out ahead of him.
It's bizarre.
It was so weird. Anyway,
Long.
I thought that was kind of funny, actually.
We should touch on Ocon though. Speaking of a driver with a
Yeah.
bit of pace, he got
P10, got a point
out.
So
He did, and well deserved. Again, wasn't it probably aided by things going on, but he fought for it. I mean, he had a mega battle with his teammate on lap 1. I think credit that they didn't clash into each other.
Yeah.
Showed some resistance going through side by side that middle sector. I don't know how they managed that lap 1, but they did.
it's nuts.
And he had some amazing passes. It was good job. It's hard to not say good job. His first point, the team's first point.
Especially considering where that team was at the start of the season, the fact that you couldn't even see him in the points unless like real wacky shit happened, like 7 retirements, and somehow they just ended up, in the right spot. Like I feel like even races that have had a lot of retirements, they're still like the 2 slowest on the grid still, and it's like so. It's a little bit optimistic, at least Alpine. I haven't said Alpine in about 4 years. Alpine, or at least not looking like they're going to be right at the back. I think that's reserved for, at the moment, I think the Sauber in particular is looking quite dire, and Williams look surprisingly bad. Yeah, I feel like I just feel like they should be higher, but every weekend I feel like, this is where they can be strong.
Yeah,
they're just nowhere. Like,
you go, surely they have a point finish or 2 by now.
Nope,
because that's just what they do every year.
Yeah, they're just
they haven't really gotten close to it either.
No, it's worrying, isn't it? Like,
it's close. It's just that it's close.
Yeah,
and you find those margins where RB, even in this case, Ocon finding a margin that any of those could have had. You've actually got to really fight for it and get it together to get into the points.
I think Williams need to go back to the spreadsheets. It was obviously working initially, and
that's the joke, isn't it? The shtick. First car not built in a spreadsheet.
Yep, it's dog shit. So I think they had it right the first time. I always said it.
Yes, yes. I do like the reports going on about Logan. We won't go into too much drama, but
yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see. Even for him, for Magnussen, I wouldn't be surprised if this year, halfway through, we see a few things changing around here. There's certainly a few things going on, but we'll have to see.
There was even talks that as early as Imola, which is in a week or so. What time is it?
A certain man had been testing there, and
yes. I don't know. He's. I feel like Williams normally I feel like they would give him the rest of the season, especially like at the moment they're not fighting for points. Like they're not even. It doesn't even feel like they're close.
It's not like it's actually sacrificing much.
Yeah, unless they really do want to test, Antonelli for the Mercedes seat for next year, and that's the reason why maybe Mercedes are the big driving force
if
behind
Papa Merc
this.
had given them a big
Yeah.
yes.
So that can be really the only explanation, is they want Antonelli for next year.
Yes.
And if everything goes to plan, this is the way that they can do it kind of risk-free. Or at least test it risk-free.
Yes,
so,
have some time to understand if it's all going to go to crap or if there's actually a chance of this working out.
Exactly. But if that's not the route that either Williams want to go, or if the test that they have doesn't kind of play out the way they expect, I still think we'll see Sargent see out the season. But there is a small window where Sargent might just be out of his seat, like I say, as early as the next race. I don't think it'll be next race. I think it's
No,
we would have heard something by now.
but before the end of the year.
Yeah,
certainly.
For sure. So, I guess the last. Well, I have two more points, but the last point I had on the F1 stuff is, look, the FIA decisions at the moment have been pretty good up till this point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This weekend was, I think, a little bit of a blip. They obviously were quite harsh on. We've talked about Magnussen. We didn't even talk about the Bottas Piastri one in qualifying, where Bottas nearly took Piastri out into T1, like colliding on the corner. He ended up getting a penalty for it. Again, good job. The fact that Hamilton didn't receive a penalty for his T1 collision in the sprint. I'm praying you have some sort of explanation as to why he didn't, because I got nothing, man. I've got absolutely nothing. He caused the two Astons to come together, which then went into Norris, and it took Norris out of the race, and he came from quite a way back and was quite obviously not under control. Why did he not receive a penalty? They've been so good till now. Where's the penalty? It was so cut and dry. I don't get it. And like, the only thing I can think of is they didn't give... Perez had almost a similar incident where he nearly T-boned his teammate into T1 at the start of the race.
And managed to dodge people.
Exactly. Didn't hit anyone. And it's like, okay, if he had gone into someone, would he have been given a penalty? Who knows? Who knows? They might not have. It might have been like, it's just lap one T1. That's just, it's just what it is. But I don't think those moves you could, if Perez had hit him, that should have been a clear-cut penalty. Hamilton did hit someone. It should have been a clear-cut penalty and took someone out of the race because of it. I don't understand why it wasn't given. But if you have another perspective, I'd love to hear it.
I don't know about another perspective, but maybe you've probably got a few factors. I mean, the main one is that, again, this ultimately is, you can say, is caused because we still have different stewards and rotating stewarding teams. And I suspect that this was a group of stewards that saw lap one incidents probably more lenient than most other group of stewards were. And I only guess that because they didn't even raise it. In a weekend where it seemed like the FIA ban was popping up every second lap for something, it was like the one thing that didn't even pop up. I think even like Perez for a jump start popped up after the main race. You went, jump start? What are you talking about? And they dismissed that. So it felt like you just have to assume that they didn't because they were being really passive on lap one incidents. If I do have to play devil's advocate,
here we go.
The two Astons were already having an accident before Hamilton arrived. Hamilton's arrival made it a worse accident than it would have been. I think the two of them were still basically running into each other. Now, Alonso has said, oh, well, that's because I checked my mirror and I saw Hamilton coming from a mile away. And it's like, well, even if he was up your inside and made that corner, you were still running into Stroll and you still probably gave him more room for even an under-control Hamilton. So from that perspective, I think the Astons were having a clumsy incident anyway, and they would have knocked and something probably would have happened from that point, even if it wasn't as big a knock. It was just then the arrival of Hamilton and the bump of Hamilton into Alonso then is what kind of made the further chain reaction, which is then what caused them to move over to the left, and then you had man on the outside Norris, who then got collected in as well. And again, this was an incident which was seen where the contact between the cars actually was really quite minor. And on another day, the cars bump each other and then nothing happens. And in that instance, no one probably fucking cares because they go, well, Hamilton, that was a bit hot-headed, but everyone lives another day. But it's because the tiny bumps did result in a big incident. And again, you could debate this endlessly of whether the effect of it and whatever happens should fall into, what you say should happen for the penalty. Like, if Sainz and Piastri had a bump, but Piastri had no damage, do you care? Is it because he had a little bit of damage that something happened, right? If Piastri had to push Sainz wide, and actually Sainz turned in more and then hit him, would that have actually mattered? I mean, we can't know, right? We're just talking hypotheticals. But in this case, I mean, there was damage and repercussions. You would expect at least an investigation, and even then, at least we get a piece of paper at the end that says, here's what we investigated, we heard from this, and this is our conclusion. And there has been times where that's come out and produced an unpopular decision, but at least it shows a thought process, it shows something that people can hold on to, and fuck it, maybe next round when there's a tap in lap 1, people can hold up the piece of paper and go, well, hold on, you didn't do this, and then you have that conversation. It's the fact there was nothing is really what it's a bit like, well, why was there just nothing? Like, there was big ramifications here. And even if their case would have been, lap 1, whatever, just put it on the piece of paper at least so people have something to look into, to refer to talk about. Even McLaren could then, go back and protest it and then raise to say, no, we want this looked at further. We have a different angle. We have a different whatever. It's like you don't even get that opportunity. So... Yeah. It's weird. I guess it comes from a place of being super passive with this team on lap 1, but it does feel out of place when 9 times out of 10 it at least would have been looked at. Yeah. You can only put it down to just choice of this team. So. Yeah,
well, I think it's a really fair point you bring up that, we talk about the consistency of the FIA decisions, and you'd have to say the biggest contributing factor is the fact that there's not one stewarding team. Is that every race it feels like, well, I mean, it is basically a different set of stewards.
People, yeah.
Which I get the idea behind it, but when you're trying to create these rules that they do have
consistently enforced in an environment which is a very inconsistent environment.
Exactly, where it has some grey areas, and it has to. We've talked about this before, and I've been very vocal about it. It has to have grey areas because if you make things black and white, then you get into situations that it's a whole conversation. You can't have black and white with some things. Some things are great, like track limits, black and white. Again, most of the time worked, but then you go to Austria and it's a murky conversation. You have to have grey areas. And when you have grey areas and you have different people looking through the lens at the grey areas, you get different outcomes because of it. You get
inconsistency, and then that's when everyone calls up to say, can we at least have consistency? And then you stop getting drivers going, oh, well, I did that 3 races ago and got a penalty, but he didn't get a penalty. I guess it's okay now. And it spurs from a place of frustration from the drivers, from the principals, from the fans, because at least there's not the consistency. And I think that's why for the overtaking thing, they did try to come out and make it a little more black and white to say, look, this is the basis we'll be looking at now for whether we penalize a defensive or an attackive move that results in collision or driving off the track. And at least they have that now to refer to. But it still would help if you had the same people looking at it, because then you're going to get that consistency.
It's still going to have different interpretations. And
they're not going to be someone who went, oh, remember that incident from 4 races ago that I didn't actually steward? You go, oh, remember that decision we made 4 races ago? This is similar to that. Let's refer back to what we did there and discuss there. And then you just, So it's always going to be talked about. All they needed to do, I think, was just actually say they investigated it. And if it was an unpopular opinion, well, we still have a lot of those that happens.
True.
It's just the fact there was nothing was
not even raised.
Curious. It was curious. Yep.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know if you had any other points on the Formula 1 stuff. That was, I think, pretty much all I had. It was the largest US TV audience for F1 on record at 3.1 million viewers. It peaked during the race, so a lot of eyes. It's the biggest one in the US in Formula 1 in history. So, their push for the F1 in the US is obviously working. So that's good to see. We'll obviously be at 3 races a year, so I'm guessing they're probably going to try and keep that now, which...
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. But, you know, more eyes on F1 is still a good thing for Formula One. So, the only other thing I had is that we had the F1 Academy on this weekend as well. I don't know if you had the chance to watch it. I did. But
I know you enjoyed the on-track racing at least.
Yeah, the on-track racing is good. I mean, I'll point out, I'm going to spoil it for you, but like Abby Pulling basically dominated the entire weekend. She got back-to-back wins and literally didn't look under threat at all. She's looking incredibly dominant this season, just kind of extended her advantage from Dorian Pan. And I think Maya Vug is third, but it's Abby Pulling looks like the driver to beat at the moment. She's just super on form. But
strong,
yeah, lots of good fighting all the way through the like every lap there's always something happening. I don't really want to complain about it here. I have some issues with the commentary team, but I'm hoping that as the year progresses it'll sort of get ironed out a bit. But yeah, it's good. You know, I still really enjoyed the racing, and I would encourage anyone to watch it as well. I think it's the fact that it's on Formula One weekends exclusively helps a hell of a lot, particularly with the live fans as well. They get to see the F1 Academy live.
And I did like that they had a lot of good ambassadors there who were there for the Academy, even on the grid walk and in other pieces of media. You know, sometimes you get ambassadors for F1 there, but really it's just F1's almost getting benefit from having certain people there more than they get benefit from being at the F1, right? But almost everyone that was there for the F1 Academy was very proud of it, was excited by it, and talked very positive on it. So it was good to see from that aspect as well. Doesn't have to do with anything on track, but it's still a positive.
I think
positive effect from it.
I think I mean on track is great, but I think the outside the track stuff is almost more important.
Yeah, for sure. Because the idea for it is to put it in public visibility and get chat on it, and I suppose go it to something bigger. Like even Max, to his regard, was talking about it. He says that he thinks it's fantastic, but he said, make it even better than this. Like, put them in cars that are closer to what we drive if this is the end goal. Like, it's all well and good that some of them will then go off to do, you know, F4, F3, etc. But if you actually want this to be a proper thing, then put them in higher-powered machinery. And
he's got a point,
closer to what they do. And he, you know, would advocate for that in a, you know, and as anyone else would. So you hope that this is more continuing to be a growth of what is a
maybe it's just a stepping stone and it'll evolve as we go on, but
what it is still far better than we've had, so it's still good, and as we said, we'll continue to see where it goes.
100%. But that's it from us this week. We'll be back for the Imola preview. Thank you for being patient as we've been away for a couple of weeks, but fingers crossed no more chicken pox or big flus or completely dead arms where you can't even type on a computer.
I hope so, man.
None of those were me, by the way. That was just one of us had that happen.
Your turn now.
No, I'm fine. I'm good, thanks. But
healthy boy.
We'll be back for Imola. I don't think it can't be another sprint. They wouldn't have 3 in a row. I think it was last year, but it was going to be.
In sprint here, but they're not going to.
I'm not sure if is this one we have F2 and F3. I feel like we have.
I was just thinking that.
I think we have a support series. We'll figure it out the preview. It's fine.
Yeah.
But we're already getting up to an hour here. So, but yeah, thanks everyone for watching and or listening, and we'll be back very soon with our preview. Take care.
Bye.